Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Ecosystem Podcast. I am your host, Anna Rising, and on this podcast, we discuss everything soul contracts, past lives, subconscious programs, karma, everything involving the soul matrix modality. The soul matrix modality is a combination of Jewish mysticism, tarology, astrology, numerology, all tied together in a perfect little bow to give you an idea of what you agreed to experience when you incarnated in this lifetime. In this episode particularly, we are going to be diving into subconscious programs that are predictors for narcissistic behavior. Now, when I started looking into this, I initially looked up celebrities that have been called narcissists or have been said that they have narcissistic traits. And I was very, not surprised, but saddened that the majority of the people that I found on these lists were women. And they were women that were just known to be maybe a little bit of a diva, maybe very into their looks and they like things a certain way, like very outspoken women. Narcissism is not that. Now, the reason this topic interested me in the first place is because of a past relationship I had that was very, very traumatic and very difficult to talk about. So I'm going to give a bit of a trigger warning because I'm not sure exactly how much detail I'm going to go into with this, but it's going to get a little bit depressing for a little while, and then maybe we'll turn it around. Now, I'm just going to go over a little bit of my experience of being in a narcissistic, abusive relationship and what that looked like. Just even beginning to talk about it makes my heartbeat, I can feel my heartbeat in my ears. I don't know. It was a very, very rough decade of my life of being in this relationship. It started off with love bombing. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the term love bombing, it is when a person tries to influence you or manipulate you in some way by showing you affection or showing you attention. So I was 17 years old when I got into a relationship with my ex, who ended up being my husband of 10 years. So I was very young, but looking back on the beginning of that relationship, there were red flags that I probably should have paid closer attention to, but I was very much naive and new to this whole idea that people can be so calculating and manipulative. Some of those red flags early on were a bunch of inconsistencies, a bunch of promises that were never intended of being held up, just in the littlest things. I feel like there was a very gross amount of over-promising and under-delivering. There was a lot of guilt tripping. There was a lot of scare tactics even. I think that this, if you guys are familiar with narcissistic relationships at all, I think that this is probably a common symptom of it, but he would sometimes, when we were dating, in order to show that he was upset, he would start driving really fast, dangerously fast, in order to scare me. There was one particular fight that really should have ended it for me, I think. Should have made me be like, okay, maybe this is my sign to check out. But it was a fight that we were having because he made a promise and didn't keep up his end of the promise, and I was very much visibly upset by it. I think we were driving back from a church something or other with my brothers, and I started crying because he wasn't hearing what I was saying. He was dismissing it and kind of gaslighting me about it. And he got so upset that I was upset that he started yelling, and he told me to stop whining. He screamed, "Stop whining about it already," or something like that. And he did that in front of my brothers, and that should have been my first sign, I think, my first official sign that maybe this is not healthy. And it seems like such a little thing. It seems so small, but looking back, it was like the underlying issue to every fight, to every traumatic thing that happened. We kept going through the same cycle of abuse where he would do something that hurt me. I would confront him. I would try to tell him why it hurt me, and it would be immediately thrown back onto me that, well, I did something that hurt him once upon a time or earlier that week, but he's only bringing it up when I'm bringing up what hurt me. And then somehow what I did was way worse. And now we're arguing about what I did to him that was like this way worse thing. And my issue never gets addressed. I'm left having to defend myself over something that I didn't do, something that he misconstrued, in order to make it seem like he's the hurt party here. And the thing that makes all of this super hard to talk about is that it was so covert. It was so calculated that it took me forever to pick up on it. It took me absolutely forever to pick up on it. I picked up on the pattern. I realized what would happen whenever I confronted him about something, but the longer I stayed in it, the more often it happened, the faster I retracted. Every time I brought something up that hurt me, I gave up. And I was like, I'd rather it just go unaddressed, because if I bring it up, he's going to pick a fight with me, even if I am actively trying to not fight and just let him know that, hey, this was a little bit messed up. It's very difficult to communicate the mental toll this took on me over the course of 10 years. But I will do my best to try and explain it, because I see how it happened. I see how I kind of fell into this trap of coming to a person with something, and then it's immediately flipped on you. It's immediately flipped, and you're on the defensive. You start having to defend yourself because now this person has flipped the script on you and is saying all of the things that you're doing wrong and all the things that he has a problem with. And it absolutely messed with my mind. It messed with my perception of reality, because I was taking this person at his word, because this was somebody that I thought wouldn't ever lie to me. This is somebody I thought that I could trust, that would always tell me the truth, that would be honest. I thought that this was a Christian person. He's not going to be lying to me. And I always had the suspicion that he would do certain things. He would press certain buttons, like activate certain triggers in order to hurt me, in order to get a reaction out of me. But I always shut that down. I was like, no, there's no way that this is happening. I think I was in a state of denial for a very long time because I didn't want it to be true. And the thing is, when you are consistently fed the lines that your reality, your version of reality, isn't what happened, that you are misconstruing things, that you didn't understand, that you took things too personally, that you automatically assume the worst in somebody. When that gets told to you enough, it makes you not trust your brain. It makes you not trust your mind and your mind's interpretation of events. And that part is the most damaging out of everything that happened, out of everything that was said in this relationship, out of everything that was done. The thing that I regret the most is that I believed somebody over myself. I was so convinced that this was a person that wanted to work on our relationship, that this was a person that I could communicate with, that I could have a healthy relationship with. I was so convinced that I trusted this person over my own intuition. I left so many fights and disagreements and arguments asking myself, how on earth did I misinterpret this so badly? How on earth did I completely take this the wrong way, and I would break my head trying to figure out where I went wrong, trying to figure out what's wrong with me, that I keep going to the worst case scenario, that I keep assuming such negative things about my spouse. And it caused me to do a lot of inner work. It really led to a lot of introspection, which, looking back to, it was very healthy for me. I feel like I started digging a lot into trauma, childhood trauma, boundaries. I started reading lots of books on boundaries in an effort to explain what was going on, in an effort to understand what was going on, what was happening. There was eventually a moment I had that happened shortly after a very traumatic time in my life, in our marriage. Our third child started getting really bad eczema, and I was not getting a lot of sleep because I was spending the whole day holding him so that he wouldn't scratch at his face, because he would scratch very, very hard because it was really itchy, and he would scratch his face off a little bit. He'd be bleeding all the time, and I had to stop him from scratching, so I'd have to hold him swaddled up, and eventually the swaddles didn't work, so we would have to put little socks on his hands, and he would take off the socks. So I had to hold his hands together so he doesn't scratch. And there was a period of 3 months where the scratching was so bad that I wasn't getting any sleep. I was probably getting an hour of sleep a night. I was severely sleep deprived. I was just a zombie of a human being. I only had enough energy to take care of my kids. And when I was doing that, I fell behind on the housework a lot. Because keep in mind, I had to constantly hold this child to make sure he doesn't scratch his face off. So the laundry started piling up. And it was an extremely difficult time. I'm surprised I'm surprised that I'm able to talk through it without getting choked up about it right now. But like, this was a period of time where I avoid going into my photos on my phone of this time because of how bad it got. I can't look at photos of my kid in that state. So it was really rough. My kid was so miserable. He wasn't really sleeping at night. I think he'd finally fall asleep with me at like 4 or 5 in the morning because he was so itchy. And then he'd just get exhausted and finally fall asleep. And me and him started sleeping from, like, our sleep schedule was probably from 5 o'clock in the morning till 11. So my ex started getting on my case about how I can't wake up and make breakfast for our older two, and how he has to feed them every morning, how he has taken this on. I really, really, really needed his support during that time because I was very, very much losing my mind with the sleep deprivation. I was very much losing my mind. I was not in a good place mentally, and I had no support. Not only did I not have support, I had this constant, "You're not doing enough," being thrown in my face. Like, the laundry isn't being done. The house isn't being cleaned. Like, the kids aren't picked up after. Like, I was exhausted. I was in survival mode. When my son's eczema got better, I think something clicked in me. I think I had this moment where I was like, this was the worst experience of my life. And instead of getting support, instead of having a partner that helped me, he criticized and demanded more of me, more than I was physically able to do. And I expressed that many times. I expressed many times that, look, I'm at a breaking point. I'm really struggling. And this person told me we're all struggling. So something clicked in me there. I realized how alone I was in the relationship. I realized that that I was essentially a single mother already. And it would have been easier to do the single mother thing, to do all of this stuff that I'm doing by myself, and not have this person that's constantly on your neck about all of the things that you aren't doing. And I had this switch that flipped. I made this decision for myself that, okay, here's where the trigger warning comes in. It got to a really low point. And I knew that I couldn't stay in this relationship anymore. So I made a decision for myself that my kids need a mom. And the level of function I was at wasn't at a level that I wasn't there. I wasn't myself. I wasn't able to be present for them. I was depressed. I was in a really dark place. I was having very dark thoughts. It got to a point where I didn't think that I could live this way anymore. But I knew that I couldn't abandon my children. So I had to ask myself whether it would be better for my kids not to have a mom at all or to have a divorced mom. The choice was pretty clear. The choice was pretty easy, but the undertaking was definitely not. I definitely didn't expect the amount of post-separation abuse that I experienced at the hand of my ex. I definitely didn't expect that, but I knew I had to get out. I had to get out for my mental health and my sanity. I was being treated like an object. I was not allowed to have feelings. I was not allowed to have my own opinion and my own thoughts. I was constantly told what I can or can't listen to, can or can't watch. And I'm saying all of this because I want you guys to understand I would not be able to do the work I'm doing now. I would not be able to have this podcast. I would not be able to do the soul contracts and all of the amazing things that I have been able to do, that all of the amazing things I found, the parts of myself that I've found since leaving, I would not have been able to do any of it because I wouldn't be allowed to. I would regularly get comments about how I shouldn't be listening to so-and-so because they're gay. I shouldn't be listening to unchristian music. Why do I want to listen to unchristian music when you could be listening to Christian music? Christian music is so much healthier for your spirit or something like that. I stuffed down so much of what I enjoyed and what I thought. Any sort of independent thought was kind of really pushed down into the crevices of my brain. I'm saying all of this because I know how incredibly alone and how incredibly insane I felt going through all of this. I tried so hard to find people that were going through the same thing. It felt like I was fighting two different people because this person would present themselves as this stand-up Christian person in church who regularly attended church, went every Sunday, read their Bible every day. Every time that they were with other people, they would regularly just talk religion. This person would go out of their way to display themselves as the perfect husband whenever there was somebody over. Whenever my family would come over, he was offering me tea, offering me things, asking if there's anything that he can do, if there's anything I need help with. And then when nobody was there, he was the complete opposite. And a large amount of the stuff that happened, a large amount of the things that would happen in private, I just haven't been able to say to my closest family and friends because of how terrified I am to be gaslit again, for them to say, oh, well, it wasn't that bad, or oh, you're recollecting it, like your recollection is a little off because it didn't happen this way, it actually happened this way. That's been my experience with the things that I have brought up to my family. It was immediately shut down. If I told them that this person is a psychopath, that he's completely two different people, I was called a psychopath right back. I was called selfish for leaving my husband. My dad made it clear that women don't leave. Women don't leave, even forget like emotional and verbal abuse. Even if there's physical abuse, he would regularly give me this example of this woman whose husband beat her, and how even if he beat her the night before and she was all bruised, covered in bruises, there wasn't a spot on her body that wasn't covered in bruises, she would still come and bring him breakfast to work in the morning. And he used that example as that's the way you save your husband. That is the way you show him Jesus, you show him God's love. And that's how you bring him to Christ or something. This might be an exceptionally long podcast episode. But yes, I distinctly remember telling my ex when I was leaving. He didn't take it seriously. He didn't take it seriously until I moved out of the house. I probably shouldn't have let him know that I was leaving. I probably should have left in secret, because everything that followed was a nightmare. Just to give you guys an understanding of the level of indoctrination when it comes to anything new age, anything chakras and past lives and reincarnation, that's highly frowned upon by Slavic Christians. When I first started my business and started advertising my business, started advertising soul readings and putting that online, my ex-father-in-law called my mother and told her that I am practicing witchcraft and I must be stopped. And I'm saying all of this in order to let people know that they're not alone if they're experiencing post-separation abuse, if they're experiencing abuse from a covert narcissist. I wanted to put my story out there, but it's very, very difficult to digest the mental trauma that happened over the course of 10 years. It's very, very difficult to explain. But I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish anybody not being able to trust their own thinking and trust their own thoughts and be like, and completely like let their thoughts be taken over by another person and be like, okay, you tell me how to think. You tell me how I'm supposed to think, because clearly I've got it wrong. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, because I felt so low about myself. I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt like I was going crazy, but I was very much not. I was very much right and spot on, and saying that is a little cathartic. That's very healing. I'm bringing these stories up. I'm probably going to bring up some more stories in order to showcase, like, give examples of stuff that we are going to find in these programs that I'm about to list. So I'm about to list the most common programs that I found in people that are likely narcissistic. Like, these traits, I've looked through all the programs and I found these traits that are very parallel, similar to what I experienced in my narcissistic relationship and from my abuser. And we're going to go into detail about that. I didn't mean to make this episode depressing. Actually, I warned you guys that it would be depressing, so sorry. But the programs, the subconscious programs that I see in my ex's chart that kind of predict this narcissistic behavior are the avarice program, which is a program of extremism, the museum program, which I've nicknamed the good girl, good boy program, the pure stream program, and the revenge program. I did a deep dive into a bunch of celeb soul contracts to see which celebs have these programs or have very similar programs. And I have come up with a lot of good stuff for you guys. I'm going to start with the avarice program, the program of extremism. This program, the way I recognize it, the example that I always think of when I think of this program is the person that love bombs you in the beginning and then slowly takes away that affection and attention so that when they do give you like a grain of attention compared to the whole meal that they gave before, that you would be happy with it. So the extremism program, the avarice program, is all about a person that has a subconscious program where they can make generous gestures to their loved ones and not regret spending money on them. Like they're very showboaty. They're like, oh, do you see all of these generous things that I'm doing for you? And spoil them with affection and attention, and then just be cold. Just drop off that train of affection and attention and just be completely cold. I feel like it's more extreme in men because I've seen a lot of women's church that have avarice, and I feel like it more so points to an extremism in financial stuff, like a person that is very, very stingy with money and saves up money for a long time. And then after having saved up money, they go on this shopping spree and they can spend it all in one place. While for men, it seems it takes both an emotional approach and like a financial approach for this program. And here are the celebrities that I found that have the avarice program so far. Mila Kunis, James Franco, Hillary Clinton, Rihanna, Kanye, Christian Slater, Christopher Reeves, J-Lo, and Edward Norton. So a lot of these celeb names might be a little lesser known. I specifically looked up celebs that are difficult to work with, trying to see if there's any commonalities in regards to why they're difficult to work with, if they have programs that make them exceptionally difficult for whatever reason. And that's why those are popping up a little bit. So that's the extremism. That's where you see the extremism come in, whether in financial extremism or emotional extremism, where they're really extreme, like they're really hot and cold with people. So another program that I have found in my ex's chart that kind of explains narcissistic behavior a little bit is, I think, this idea of portraying this perfect person, this person that's without flaws, that ends up making people very judgmental and very presentative, very all about presentation and how you appear to others, and relying on the opinions of others excessively. There's a lot of idealism and a lot of following the rules and not wanting to step out of line, not wanting to be portrayed in a negative light whatsoever. So that probably means not really having a lot of individuality. The thing that also got me with this program, not only like with the appearances and keeping up appearances, is that this program means the person makes excuses, always excuses their behavior, excuses their bad behavior, and says that, but I didn't know, I couldn't do any better. I didn't know better. Like I didn't have the opportunity to act in a different manner when they did. And the celebs that have that in their soul contract, that program, the good girl, good boy program, are Jonah Hill, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Chris Brown, Drake, Kanye, Justin Baldoni, Chris Hemsworth, Robin Williams, J-Lo, and Jared Leto. So me and my husband looked up Chris Brown because we know what happened with him and Rihanna. So I was really curious what his reaction was, like what he was saying to the allegations that he physically abused Rihanna. And it's just spot on. You could tell that it's spot on. This program is spot on for him because he does not take any accountability for what happened. He first blames Rihanna for trying to kick him or trying to do this. She tried to kick me. And it turns out she tried to kick him because she found out that she was right about him cheating on her with someone that he worked with. So she got mad and she tried to kick him. So that warranted him beating on her the way that he did. And he very much minimized it, very much blamed it on the victim. Not surprising at all for people that are very, very hyper-focused on being the good girl, good boy kind of thing. I also specifically looked up Jonah Hill based on what had come out about him in regards to his ex. I don't remember his ex's name, but she was saying stuff about how he was very emotionally abusive. Like they went to therapy together, and then him and the therapist would gaslight her and say that this kind of like abusive behavior was okay. It was one of those things where he saw her Instagram profile. I think she was a surfer and she was in a bikini, and they started talking because he commented on it or he liked her photo or whatever. And then he gradually started trying to change her, even though she was a surfer. Like he gradually started saying that, oh, she should dress differently and she shouldn't be posting pictures of of herself in a bikini on her Instagram. And she's like, dude, that's kind of like my job. That's what I do. So I very much wanted to look into his chart, and it did not disappoint. There was definitely some very abusive programs. This brings me to probably the inspiration for this podcast episode. I read that Elizabeth Moss, she's the actress from The Handmaid's Tale, she said that someone said this of her ex-husband. He's a comedian, and I can't remember his name right now, but she said that they said he's a great impersonator, and the greatest impression he makes is that of a normal person. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, that's totally how I feel about my experience with my ex. It is very hard for me to combine those two very different people and see them as one, because it's absolutely polar opposites. The representation that he puts out, the face, the mask that he puts out, and who he is with his guard down, it's terrifying. I don't know how I didn't see it for 10 years. That's how well covert narcissists can hide their true selves. I feel like I would be exhausted playing this role for such an extended period of time, but there was like literally moments where I would look into this person's eyes and kind of see the light leave their eyes. It's absolutely terrifying. And I feel like those who have been in these kind of relationships, you're gonna know what I'm talking about. But there's this look that a narcissist gives you when you've pissed them off, when you have called them out on their stuff. That is absolutely terrifying, because it feels like there's no person behind those eyes anymore. Like it's like there's nobody home. And it's just like this shell of a person. It makes my skin crawl. I know I touched a little before about how with subconscious programs in soul contracts, there's always a light side and a shadow side. So when you're operating from the light, you are operating from the positive. So the program is manifesting the positive, but the shadow side has it manifesting the negative. And I think I've mentioned that some programs are very much more severe. Like if the negative sides are very, very severe, the positive sides are very, very good. And this is specifically what I came across with this program. This program, I'm still working out the kinks of it because I have a hard time figuring out its energy. It's called Pure Stream, and it sounds wonderful. And the pros of it are absolutely wonderful. This is a person that has a very high spirituality, and they possess a lot of inner power, inner energy. They have a lot of energy stored up. They have the ability to become a very powerful source of positive energy in the world, which is a wonderful thing. But then it gets really dark when it's operating from the negative. And I've seen some of the darkest charts, I would say, have this program because there's the potential to do so much good. There's also an equal potential to do a lot of harm. This gives me cult vibes. This gives me people that have purposefully grown this following, grown this like collection of people in order to follow their teachings and either mismanage them, like steal money from them, or use this power of influence they have over people for malicious purposes. So the way I interpret it in the chart of a narcissist is this is a person that will use religion, will use outside kind of ideas in order to control and manipulate you. This is really the program of manipulation, trying to influence somebody in order to get something out of them, either obedience or scare them into providing you with something. So the pure stream program to me sounded and looked very innocent at first. But then when I started seeing it pop up in people that have done some not very nice things, I kind of highlighted it and stashed it away in order to come back to it later. So I think that that's what the pure stream program is in the negative. It's a lot of manipulation, a lot of using people and using your influence, using your power maliciously. Whereas if it was used in a positive way, you could do a lot of good. You could use that same power and influence in order to bring about good energy, positive energy. And sometimes that does not happen. So the people that have the Pure Stream program are Ashton Kutcher, Danny Masterson, who recently got convicted of rape, I believe. I don't know how recent it was, but Ashton Kutcher was getting a lot of slack, him and his wife, for supporting Danny Masterson, for giving him like a letter of recommendation. I don't know. Jonah Hill, Russell Brand, Chris Brown, Usher, Beyonce, Alec Baldwin, Tina Turner, Jared Leto, and Ellen DeGeneres. So when you see a name like Beyonce, I don't know why I'm saying it like that, Beyonce. When you see Beyonce, you can kind of get a better sense of the influence there. She has a lot of influence, a lot of energy, a lot of powerful, powerful energy. And I feel like that gives you a better understanding of how this energy could be used in a negative light. I have seen the revenge program popping up as a commonality, like a lot as a commonality amongst the people that have these programs, the Good Girl, Good Boy program, the Avarice program, the Pure Stream program. They all usually, or for the most part, also have the revenge program. So in the light, the revenge program, you have a person that's very honest. They demand a lot from others, but they also demand the same from themselves. And they have a hard time reconciling the negative actions of other people because they don't understand the motivation behind them. And they have this skill to focus on one goal and like go straight towards it and finish it, like go ham until they complete it. On the negative side, we have a person that's very, very unforgiving, resentful, and this person could hold on to these resentments for years if you've said something offensive to them, or if you lied to them or hurt them in some way. They could harbor resentments for years. This person ends up spending time, like they literally start thinking ways that they could have, like rebuttals that they could have given, ways that they could have talked back to you or like put you down. So they start plotting these punishments. They start plotting like, okay, next time I see this person, I'm going to say this and this and this in order to punish them for saying something that hurt you instead of just letting it go and being like, okay, that guy had an off day, or I don't know what happened. Like, that person has an issue. They're going to try and get back at them. And it ultimately leads to like revenge playing a huge role in their life, where they're spending so much energy trying to act out this dream revenge plot. And the celebs that have this program in their contracts are Ashton Kutcher, Natalie Portman, Taylor Swift, Kristen Bell, Joe, I'm going to butcher his last name, Joe Manganiello. Manganiello? I'm going to stick with that. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, Jason Momoa, Rihanna, Justin Baldoni, Ozzy Osbourne, Sandra Bullock, Hugh Grant, Madonna, Johnny Depp, and Sylvia Plath, which we talked about last time. So just because you have these programs in your chart, it doesn't mean that they're going to manifest in this extreme. You might still experience all of this stuff, all of this like planning and harboring these resentments internally, but never act on it. But some people actually act on it. Surprise, surprise. I feel like this goes hand in hand with the Good Girl, Good Boy program, the responsibility program. It talks about a person who feels responsible for others. They very much like to take care of other people and have this sense of duty towards them in the positive, when operating in the positive. But then when operating in the negative, we see somebody that doesn't take accountability or responsibility for any of their actions. They always blame it on other people or other circumstances, and they're entirely not at fault. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the Good Girl, Good Boy program, where the person's like, I couldn't have done any better. I couldn't have done anything differently. Now, in my search for the perfect recipe for a narcissist, or the like what programs a narcissist would have, I found a whole bunch of programs that sound narcissistic, that sound like they have that potential for abuse, potential for going somewhere abusive and dark. And I'm gonna like segue really quickly into Brad Pitt's chart, because I pulled Brad Pitt's chart because I'm like, I feel like there's a lot of controversy surrounding him and everything that he's been going through, especially with Angelina Jolie and their custody battle and the allegations of abuse. So I took a look at his chart and I was floored, because Brad Pitt has the same program that Ted Bundy has. I'm gonna let you guys sit with that one for a second. He has the same program that Ted Bundy has, that I've only seen in Ted Bundy's, up until that point, Ted Bundy's chart. And it's the program where you can separate your work life, your professional life, from your personal life, like a mastermind. And this is like, I feel like I'm going to nickname this program, which is called the confidentiality program, as the program that means that you'd be an excellent FBI agent, CIA spy, like covert, undercover detective. I don't know. I'm going to nickname that program the master manipulator program, maybe the master spy program, because this is a person that's absolutely excellent at leading a double life, leading a secret life, keeping secrets and being very secretive. And they spend a lot of their energy, people that have this program spend a lot of their energy trying to make sure these two worlds don't collide, trying to make sure that they're not spilling secrets, like they're not saying the wrong thing at work or saying the wrong thing at home. It takes a lot of energy out of them. Shortly after I found that program in Brad Pitt's chart, I found it in Hillary Clinton's chart. So thus far, I have 3 people with this program. This program where they're excellent at separating these two versions of themselves, these two different worlds, and keeping a lot of secrets. And that's Brad Pitt, Hillary Clinton, and Ted Bundy. So oftentimes when they're operating from their negative and they've been just harboring secrets for so long, like it takes a toll on a person, which I feel like it takes such a huge energetic toll on a person. I can't imagine. What ends up eventually happening is there's this emotional overflow and inner conflict that kind of erupts because you're trying to keep a tab on all of these secrets and lies and double life kind of stuff. And it ends up all spilling out. And in this program, it literally says this is the program for people that blackmail others, for people that manipulate others. There's very little like pros to this. There's a whole lot of cons to it. Like, I guess it's a pro that you could be a good FBI agent, but at what cost, you know? So that was interesting. I feel like that's different. I don't feel like that's a narcissist per se. I feel like that's just a person that's really good at manipulating to get what they want out of people. Now, this led me, all of this digging into narcissists and abusive behavior, this led me to believe if, like, to try and see if physical abuse is going to pop up on a chart. So I started looking into celebrities that have been physically abused, celebrities that physically abused, like that have physically abused people. And I was expecting to see like programs of violence, programs of like aggression, and I didn't see that pop up a lot. And I'm going to touch on the program violence in a different episode entirely because it's very, very interesting what I've discovered about that program. I have a theory about it, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. I'm going to have to do it on a different episode because that's a completely separate topic. But then I started looking at celebrities that have like criminal charges against them. And one of the first names that I saw pop up was Emma Roberts. Apparently she bit, like there was a bite mark on her boyfriend, and the police got involved, and the boyfriend didn't press charges, but it was still like out there and known that she had the police called on her. I looked into her chart, and it was pretty dark. It was really, really dark. It was the darkest female chart, I think, that I've come across in a good long while, because it had a lot of the really, really heavy programs that I want to touch on just because they're abusive. They may be potentially narcissistic, like narcissistic abuse. There's a program called Bad/Good Company, where one of the traits of this, like a person that has this program in their chart, is that they ignore their partner's interests, ignore their partner's emotions, and kind of disrespect them. And I felt like that tied into a little bit of what I experienced in narcissistic abuse. Like there's this complete dismissal of another person's needs, of another person's emotional state. Like in order for them to even start to listen to you, it has to like get really bad. And it's like, okay, like I guess I'm going to have to address this. So I thought that was a little bit crazy. I didn't expect that in Emma Roberts' chart at all, because I don't know much about her other than her being Julia Roberts' niece, but her chart kind of told on her a little bit. Amongst the soul contracts that I conjured up that had these programs that I was like, okay, there's potential for abuse here. The one that popped up a lot was the bragging program. And bragging seems harmless enough, but I feel like it kind of goes hand in hand with some other programs. It's kind of like a gateway program into the more extreme subconscious programs that we see manifest in charts like these. But for the bragging program, there's this tendency to overpromise and underdeliver. There's this tendency to showboat and try to keep appearances, try to buy something that you cannot afford, and then like just so you could wear it to somewhere fancy, and then return it because you couldn't afford it. These kind of people have a gift of persuasion, so they're likely very good with words. They tell a very good story. And the people that have the bragging program in their charts are Johnny Depp, Danny Masterson, Natalie Portman. I feel like Natalie Portman has a little bit of every program, because I don't know why. Every time I pulled up a program, like she just has a bunch of them. I've written her name so much on the back of these little note cards I have. She pops up a lot. Anyway, Jonah Hill, John F. Kennedy, Kanye, Alec Baldwin, Chris Hemsworth, J-Lo, Hugh Grant, Madonna, and Brad Pitt. So Kanye's hitting these programs quite a lot. I feel like he came up a lot in the lists of celebs that have been called narcissistic. He pops up quite a lot, and I think based on his soul contract, that checks out that people think that he's narcissistic because he probably most definitely is. So another program that is a gateway to the more extreme programs, to the more abusive programs, is the collusion program, because this is the program of somebody that's trying to rally people up in order to do something. And in the positive, rallying people up, having influence over a group of people to do something positive, to work at a homeless shelter or a women's shelter or do a marathon, that's great. But when it's operating from the negative, usually the people that have collusion in their contracts are people that are trying to rally somebody up against someone. So they're kind of getting this smear campaign going against somebody in order to further their own agenda. And you will find that pops up in Danny Masterson's chart. Danny Masterson really is doing the most in these extreme programs, in these like hardcore programs. Justin Timberlake is also one that has this. John Cena, Hillary Clinton, JFK, Russell Brand, Beyonce, Drake, Kanye, Ike Turner, Jared Leto, Brad Pitt, and Cristiano Ronaldo. So there's this propensity that they can gather people up in order to go against someone. Hopefully they're using it for the positive. Hopefully they're trying to gather people up, influence people to do something positive instead of get them all on this boat. Like, oh, let's all go hate on Angelina Jolie because she's dragging my name through the mud and she's calling me abusive when I actually am. So stuff like that. The best/worst program is probably the program that I'm going to end with, because there's a lot of like mini similarities. Like there's some programs that are branches of other programs because they have very similar numbers, so you're going to likely see them together, that aren't very extreme. So I'm going to bring up one more program that's pretty extreme. That's I think the most extreme out of all the programs, even the violence program. But it's called best/worst program. So people that have this in their chart have a very wide circle of friends that likely copy them, look up to them, like regard them as a role model. They demonstrate complete dedication to their work. They're very, very ambitious. Like they're very like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to absolutely master this. I'm absolutely going to kill this audition, or I'm going to like work my butt off to kill this audition. But the negative, and I feel like this is why this is the most extreme program, it's because of the covertness of it. And that's the thing with abuse, isn't it? It's very easy to pinpoint abuse when it's physical, when you have like a black eye to show for it. But like when it's mental, when it's emotional, when you have just been like mentally decimated, it's very, very hard to present that. It's very hard to explain that. Even going through it, it's very difficult because you question it yourself. You question it yourself and you're like, how much of that was actually real? How much of that was my own fault? How much of that was like in my own head? Like there's so much intangibleness to it. You can't measure it. You can't showcase it. You know the effect of it. You know the damage it's caused and how it's like reprogrammed your brain. But that's because you live in your brain. You can't really take your brain out and be like, look, this completely altered my brain chemistry. Like this completely altered the way my mind works. But it's difficult to lay that all out on the table and show it to somebody. Anyway, back to the best/worst program. The negative is not always noticeable. So it only comes out amongst the closest people, right? But when it surfaces, it's very severe because this person has this deep-seated disdain for the world, and when something happens, like everything is just the worst. Like this person cannot be satisfied with anything, with any amount of effort you put in. They're like, this is the worst. This is the worst. You could do so much better. It's never enough. So in the positive, it's nice, happy. This person's dedicated to their work. They have a lot of friends, a lot of influence. But on the negative, I think the most dangerous part about it is that it's so unnoticeable unless you're living with the person. And the celeb contracts that I found with this particular program, I only found 3. So this is probably going to give you guys the extent of the severity of this polarity of how discreet these kind of people are. Well, one of them is not so discreet. The first person is Charlie Sheen, Emma Roberts, and Jeffrey Epstein. That's like a nice group of people to be grouped into. I did not expect Emma Roberts, of all people, to be on the same list as Jeffrey Epstein for anything, but that's what it's showing here. So yeah, not surprised at all that Danny Masterson has some of the worst ones. A little bit surprised about Ashton Kutcher, a little bit. Brad Pitt absolutely threw me for a loop with having the same program as Ted Bundy, and Hillary Clinton too. I feel like that's like very double life, double identity kind of stuff going on there. I was pleasantly surprised. Okay, let me tell you a couple of the good charts. Let me tell you a couple of the good ones because there have been good ones. I did look into the whole Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard thing. I wanted to see what was going on in their charts in order to get an idea of who was at fault. I want to say at who was more likely to be the one that was abusive. And Amber Heard's chart did not look so good. Amber Heard's chart looked really, really toxic compared to Johnny Depp's. Johnny Depp has a few negative programs that I could definitely see that are actively manifesting in his chart. But Amber Heard's was a doozy. I'm not surprised that Johnny Depp won that one because hers did not look so good. She did have the Millionaire program and the Midas Touch program, which is like 2 of the biggest like financial blessings that you can have in a chart. So I'm not sure what happened there. I'm not sure what happened with her chart, but hers looks toxic. Eminem, loved his chart. I expected it to, I mean, I love Eminem, so I don't want to say I expected it to look worse, but I kind of did. I expected a little toxicity, but his looks great. His looks like he is a gem of a human being. He had very little programs. I think he only had 4 programs, and they were not toxic or malicious at all. And I wanted to touch a little bit on Mariah Carey's chart because every time I like opened up a list for most narcissistic celebrities, Mariah Carey was always top 3. She does not get enough credit, this girl. I know that everybody considers her a diva and like super full of herself, but her chart looks really good. Her chart looks really good. Like, she doesn't have any toxic, like malicious programs. This girl just worked hard for her money. She worked hard to be where she's at. Blake Lively. I remember discussing her on my stories. Blake Lively's chart did not look so good. Oh my gosh. Okay, I just realized she needs to be added to the same list as Jeffrey Epstein, Emma Roberts, and what was the third one? Charlie Sheen. She has that program too. So that should probably give you an insight into Blake Lively. I feel like she is on a whole other level. Beyonce, also has a lot of programs going on, a lot of not very good things. So does Usher, so does Rihanna. Oh, I can't believe I didn't touch on Andrew Tate. I I wanted to, but I guess his programs aren't coming up like in the narcissist kind of way, but there's a lot of interesting stuff with Andrew Tate there. Maybe I'm going to touch on that in another episode. James Franco has so many programs, so much stuff going on there. I think James Franco needs help. I think somebody needs to go check on him and make sure he's doing okay. So does JFK. Ellen DeGeneres and Jared Leto, I think, are cutting it really close with James Franco. I feel like they have a lot of programs, a lot of karma that they are trying to clear in this lifetime, clearly. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that wasn't too heavy and depressing, but I think that it would be worth it if one person just didn't feel like they were losing their minds going through something similar to me. I feel like I'm going to eventually talk about it more. I feel called to talk about it more, although I do not like to. It's not my favorite topic. I don't like to relive it. I feel like it's something that people should be more aware of. And if I could pinpoint a recipe for a narcissist based on the soul contract and save a few of you souls a lot of grief and heartache, it would so totally be worth it. Anyway, if you guys wanted to get your own soul contract reading, you could do so at annarising.org or by going to my Instagram, Anna Rising Official. If you'd like, follow my Instagram, Anna Rising Official, and the podcast at The Soul Ecosystem on Instagram. And any comments, ratings, reviews on the podcast are so greatly appreciated. If you enjoy this kind of content, please tell your friends. Let them know that soul contracts exist and that they are out here exposing people and spilling the tea. This is a nod to Emma Roberts, because where on earth did that come from, girl? Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate all the love and support. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and tune in next Friday for the next episode.